Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Malondo, and I'm going to present on the subject of HIV/AIDS Studies 1, and the code is HS10S1. So the purpose of this presentation is going to be covered, or is going to be divided in two parts. The one part is going to look at some practical examples that you can look at as part of the preparation of your examination, and then also to look what you have to do as part of your preparation, and then also during the examination what would be expected from you. And we're also going to look at then the second part, the content of the subject, and how important it is for you also to look through the subject. So the subject, as I said, is part of your exams preparation, and it is still expected from you to understand the whole subject and also to read other additional information and resources as part of this presentation or preparation. Now, the first thing is these are some practical guidelines that and some tips that I can give you as part of your preparation before you do the examination, and then also during the examination. So many students, they always make this mistake, and we want you as part of your preparation to make sure that you are ready. So at least 2 months before you're going to write your exam, or 1 month before you write the exam, you need to compile what we call a timetable, or a timetable, or as part of your preparation. And in this timetable, you have to look at your subject. So if your subject is having 10 units or 10 chapters, then you have to divide those 10 units or 10 chapters within the 2 months period, within your time schedule or timetable. And once you have done that, then you are ready to do the following 3 things. The first thing that you have to do is you have to read your subject. It's very important for you to read, and the reason of reading your subject is to understand the content and the context of your subjects. Because when you don't understand the content of your subjects, it can be very, very difficult for you during the examination. So, and while you are reading, in order to get understanding, then the second thing that you have to do is you have to make notes. The reason for making notes while you are reading is to identify those key concepts and notes that you do not understand. And you underline them, you make a circle, and then you can go to the dictionary and to read more about these keywords or the key concept. And as you're doing that, then it will help you a lot. And also when you have additional information, notes will also help you. Make notes of those additional information that you get, whether it's in the library, whether it's from additional sources. And those notes that you are making will actually help you during your revision, or when you're going to revise for your examination. Then the third thing that you have to do is revision, and the revision is normally a week, 1 week before, a few days before you're going to write the subject. The purpose of revision is not to memorize, it's not to study, it's not to read to understand, it is only to refresh your mind. So you're only refreshing your mind what you have already studied and read 2 months ago. So what you did a month or 2 months ago will help you during your revision, and then you will be ready for the examination. Now, during the examination, students always make many mistakes, and I want to give you some 4 tips that you can actually look at while you are going to write your exam. Now, during the exam, you only have your examination paper in front of you and the script. Some students, because of time, they just start to write. They don't read the question, they start to read or to answer the questions. So the first thing what you have to do is to read through all the questions. Read through all the questions, and then secondly, select the questions that you understand very well. And the reason why I'm saying is because, remember, you only have 2 hours or 3 hours to finish writing the exam. So starting with the easiest question will actually save time. And when you still have time, then you can go to the most difficult question. Then after you have selected the question, then you have to read those selected questions again. And the reason why you are reading your selected question again is you want to understand what the question is all about. You want to know what are the question. What are the question for? So it's very important. And after you have read the question and you understand them, then you have to answer the question. Don't interpret, don't assume this is what the question is all about. Make sure that you answer the question that is actually being asked. So that's what you have to do. So these are practical tools that you can use before the exam and then also during the examination. So I'm going to go to the second part of my presentation, which is part of the examination scope. But you are still requested as a student to read through the whole subject, the whole study manual, whether you also have other books, in order for you to understand the content and the context of the subject. So do not just rely on this examination scope. This examination scope is just a guideline to prepare you and to help you then for your examination. So there is a number of themes that I'm going to go through randomly, and I hope that you will have an understanding. The first one is the immune system. Now, if you don't understand what the immune system is all about, it's very important for you to go to my previous presentation and then also to your study manual. There are very good information that you can get. So your immune system is actually the system within your body that helps you to fight any kind of infections. If any kind of infections or virus come within your body, whether it's through your mouth, whether it's through injection, doesn't matter. The moment it comes within your body and in your bloodstream, your body has a defense mechanism which we call immune system. And those defense mechanism will then fight this virus. If you get a flu, this defense mechanism or this immune system will then help you also to fight against this infection or against these viruses. Then in your submission, you have to explain what is an immune system. Secondly, you must explain how does an immune system work. And then thirdly, you're going to start to discuss about immune system and HIV infection. Now, you've heard terms like CD4 count, T cells, and so on. Now, in your discussion, you have to explain what is a T cell, what is a CD4 cell. You have to discuss those in details, because this will actually help you very much, especially when you want to answer the question. Now, there are so many discussion when it comes to immune system, but for you at this stage, we are not expecting you to look at different research that was done on the immune system, but all what we want is we want you to have an understanding of the definition of an immune system, the purpose and the function of the immune system, and how it works. So it's very important for you to have that understanding. And once you have done that, then it's easier for you to answer the rest of the question. Now, as I said earlier, you have to discuss this. Now, if you are being infected with HIV/AIDS, the first thing that happened, and as we have explained earlier, is it actually goes to your cells, which we call the T cells, and then it wants to attack your cells and in your bloodstream, and this is what happened. And remember, also discuss the difference between the function of your white blood cells and then also your red blood cells, because you've got two kinds of blood cells, the white blood cells and then also the red blood cells, and compare that, also link that to the discussion of your immune system. Then the other theme is what we call PMTCT. It's prevention to mother to child transmission, and that was for many years, but now the intervention or the strategy is no more the prevention, but it's the elimination to mother and child transmission, which is EMTCT. So discuss that in detail. What role does EMTCT play in Namibia? Has it been successful? Compare EMTCT coverage nationally. And remember, you have to link that to pregnant women. You have to link that to the antenatal clinics, and then also discuss it in the current situation with the HIV infection among pregnant women, and then also the intervention by government to fight this infection. And what about breastfeeding? Also discuss the advantage and the disadvantage of breastfeeding. And why is EMTCT so important for breastfeeding? Because many mothers don't realize that EMTCT or PMTCT is very important, especially when it comes to breastfeeding. And research have shown that breastfeeding is more healthier for a baby than formula. And also discuss the reason why. And what happened, what must a mother do to make sure that she can breastfeed a baby and a baby will always stay healthy. So discuss this in detail and how that also affect the mother that's living with a disease or that's actually positive. And then you have to discuss also the challenges that other countries are facing. For an example, in other African countries like Zimbabwe, look at other countries like Mozambique. What challenges do they face when it comes to EMTCT? You can also look at Angola. What challenges do they face when it comes to the elimination of mother-to-child infection? In fact, according to UNAIDS and WHO, it is unforeseen or unheard of or unaccepted for children or babies to be infected in today's day and age. Now, with the availability of ARV, it makes it more easier for women to have access to ARV that can actually help them to fight or to eliminate the transmission to mother and child. Then the other thing is you have to also look at the defaulting rate. What do you do about the mother that actually failed to use her ARV or does not know that he or she's HIV positive? What does a mother do, and how can we accelerate this initiative EMTCT in Namibia? And if we are going to initiate it, how are we going to involve the communities? Because the community health outreach programs are very important, especially when it comes to the education of mothers and pregnant mothers. So in your discussion, discuss the whole intervention when it comes to EMTCT. What do we do with for an example, where you have pregnant women that are in a rural area and they just gave birth and they are HIV positive. They need to be on ARV. And for them to have access or to go to the health clinics, the distance is too long, or it's long distance for them to reach the clinic. So discuss those kinds of challenges in the implementation of EMTCT when it comes to distance and the accessibility of ARV for pregnant women. And then secondly, also look currently at the protection of a mother who's HIV positive when it comes to confidentiality and then disclosure of her status, especially when she's in a relationship, whether it's a husband or a boyfriend. I'm talking about the father of the child. Also discuss the role of confidentiality and disclosure. How can this mother disclose her status to the father of the child to make sure that she can openly use her ARV, she can openly and not keep this as a secret, and that so that nobody knows about the situation. So also discuss that in detail and how important is EMTCT in Namibia and in the rest of Africa. And then of course the other issue is then also infection of HIV and other STIs or STDs. Now, as I said in my presentation earlier, is that STI or STDs is one of the infections that are mostly ignored, and there's so many ignorance when it comes to STI. Many people, especially the community, they know about HIV, they know about HIV infection, but what about STIs? And when especially young people that find themselves very vulnerable, having risky sexual activity, and they are being already infected with STI. And then in the later years, become also infected with HIV, then you have somebody that's having both STI or STDs and HIV. So how do you treat those diseases, and how can you make sure? Because now you must know, we talk about the immune system, and when the person is infected with HIV and also STDs, then it means it will have a fatal effect on the immune system of that person. So talk about those healthy lifestyle, healthy behaviors, how important it is to have a healthy behaviors, and how it is important also to adhere to your medication. Adherence is very, very important, and so it's so important to discuss these two infection and how it is and what contribution it can make, whether it's positive or whether it is also negative, and especially when it comes to multiple concurrent partnership, where you have partners that are in a long relationship and they don't use protection at all, and they find themselves that one of the parties is unfaithful, and you have a situation where you have a multiple partnership, and then it's like a cycle that becomes bigger, and the network of partners become bigger, and then you have a situation where you have a challenge in treating these diseases. And also commercial sex work in Namibia is one of the biggest challenge. Now, in your discussion, talk about what is commercial sex work, what are the challenges of commercial sex work, and then you also link commercial sex work with the current policy of Namibia, and you look at different legal framework. You can also discuss the issue of decriminalization of commercial sex work. You can also talk about the legalization of commercial sex work. Look at other best practices of other countries, whether it's South Africa, whether it's Australia, and other countries like Holland, Europe, where commercial sex work is legal. And how is that? How will that also have an effect or impact on Namibia as a country? So discuss that in detail as much as possible. And then also look at there are two, as I said earlier, there are two different types of commercial sex work. There are those what we call the informal sex work, and then also formal sex work. The informal sex work are actually those sex work where you have women going to the shabin or to a bar, and they exchange sex for alcohol, or they go to a friend looking for money, or to a male compatriot looking for money, and then they exchange money or any other goods for sex. Now, those is what we call informal sex work. They are not legalized. They are not known. It is normally consensual. It's normally an agreement between two people or three people. So you have this informal sex work settings, like I say, at the shabins, at the bar, and so on, where women exchange their bodies for alcohol or for another favor, and so on. Then you've got the formal part of the commercial sex work, where you've got sex workers standing at certain designated places, or there is a brothel, a house or a place where everybody knows if you go there, or a demarcated place which we call a red light district, where it is formalized, and you know if you go to that place or to that house or to that spot, you will find a sex worker. So those is what we call the formal sex workers. So they are known, there is an agreement, and of course there is also an exchange for sex for money, or any favor for money. So in your discussion, bring out these different dynamics of formal and informal sex workers, and then also how what role does it play, and then also the impact of HIV infection on both the commercial sex work and the formal sex work, and also the non-formal or informal sex work. So discuss these two dynamics and as part in the light of HIV infection, so that whoever is going to look at it can know that you have an understanding of sex work. And then of course, as part of your prevention strategy, community mobilization is very important. Remember that at the heart of your outreach or your prevention strategy, the community is very important, and mostly community at grassroots level are neglected when it comes to the prevention strategy. Now you have to first define what is community mobilization. Then secondly, you are going to look at different activities when it comes to community mobilization. Then thirdly, you're going to look at who is involved when it comes to community mobilization. And fourthly, also discuss the role of gatekeepers. Because remember, those community leaders play a very important role, and they are the gatekeepers. They are the access that you can have towards the community. Now, if you are not going to involve the community leaders in your whole mobilization strategy, then you might receive or get some opposition. So discuss some of those challenges that you can experience when it comes to community leaders and vis-a-vis community mobilization, and how important is community leaders in your intervention strategy or in the implementation of your program. Then, of course, HIV infection, we talked about that also before. What is HIV infection? And in this discussion, you have to look at how do people get infected with HIV. Secondly, you have to look at what are the cycle or the process of the HIV infection, starting from where it comes into the bloodstream, where it replicates itself. You have to look at the HIV particles. You have to look at the mutation of the virus, and you have to look at all of this aspect, that what happens within the body when somebody is being infected with HIV. And so these are some of the aspects that you have to look at. And then you have to look at also other HIV related infection, like STI, as I said previously. So you have to look at details, and then also look at the time frame of the HIV infection. How long does it take before you can detect the HIV within your T cells or within your body? How long does it take? What kind of test can be done to ensure or to make sure that you are not infected or that you are infected with HIV/AIDS. So you can talk about the ELISA test. You can look at the rapid testing, also as part of detecting or confirming the HIV infection within somebody. So it's very important that you have to look at all of this. And then, of course, then you have to look at HIV infection and the current national strategic framework. What does the government of Namibia put in place, or what is put in place as part of the prevention of HIV infection? So discuss that as much as possible. And of course, HIV prevention is very important. So you can look at different strategies, you can look at best practices. Remember our strategy in Namibia, we've got the A, B, C, D, and so on. A for abstinence, B faithful, C for condoms, D for delay. So also look at other prevention strategies. So you can go to the library, you can look at additional information, and when you're going to look at other preventative strategies, you can also read about other best practices that has been done as part of the HIV prevention. And then you're going to look at what are the role as an individual when it comes to HIV infection. What is the role of the community when it comes to HIV infection and prevention? So remember, the individual has so much to play as much as the community, because the community consists of individuals. So if only one individual will play a very important role when it comes to the prevention of HIV and also scaling up the prevention, then of course the rest of the community can can be benefit because of this intervention. Then in the HIV prevention, you can also look at different behavior and comes to behavior change. You can look at BCC behavior change and communication. You can look at the COMBI strategy by UNFPA. You can look at the 1990 initiative by UNAIDS. You can look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, currently up to 2030. You can come back to Namibia and you can look at other this framework and tools like the NSF, the National Policy on HIV/AIDS. So there are so many strategies that communities and individuals can play as part of the HIV prevention. So as I say before, the purpose of this presentation is to prepare you for your examination, and I hope that this presentation has given you some guidelines, some practical tips to be ready for the upcoming examination. So I still encourage you to go through your study guides, manual, through your notes, and make sure that you understand the subject. By the time you're going to write the exam, then of course you will know what to answer. So I hope that this presentation has helped you, and I thank you for listening to me. Thank you and bye.